Oh hi. Potsdam, the city in the east of Germany, the capital of the federal land Brandenburg, where has the status of the extra-regional city. It is located on the Havel River and on coast of several lakes connected among themselves, in 20 km to the southwest from Berlin. Potsdam was founded presumably in the 10th century on the place of the village of Slavic by the tribe of Polavsky Slavs and received the name, "We will rise," or Potsdam. The first mentions of him belong to 993 when the Emperor Otto III granted this earth to Quedlinburgski Abbey. Further, Potsdam was mentioned as the town. Now German, but not Slavic. Until in 1345 I received the status of the city. However, in 1573 it remained a small trade town with the population of 2,000 inhabitants. The big loss to Potsdam was caused by the 30 Years' War, 1618–1648, which destroyed about a half of the city. The fate of Potsdam changed cardinally in 1660 when it was chosen as the hunting residence of Friedrich Wilhelm I, the Elector of Brandenburg. Also their soldiers' barracks were placed. Subsequently the city became the residence of the Prussian royal family. Majestic buildings were mainly built during rule of Frederick the Great. Palaces in the Park of Sanssouci. French, without cares, the architect George Wenceslav von Knobelsdorff, 1744. Are well known for the English gardens and interiors in style of Rococo. While Berlin was the capital of Prussia, and later in the German Empire, the Supreme Court remained in the next Potsdam. Also here many government agencies located. The city lost the status of the second capital in 1918 when World War I was finished, and the Emperor Wilhelm II was overthrown. The symbolical foundation for an era of the Third Reich was laid by official hands which the President Hindenburg and new German Chancellor Adolf Hitler in the Potsdam Garrison Church shook on March 21, 1933, symbolizing the coalition of military Reichswehr and National Socialists. On April 14, 1945 the center of Potsdam was destroyed by the English bombs. From July 17 to August 2, 1945 the Setzlienkov Palace was the venue of the Potsdam Conference. Here on July 26, 1945 the Potsdam Declaration of Great Britain, the USA and China was published. Main dates. The 10th century is a hypothesis of Slavic historians that on the place of the village of Slavic Slavs Gavalianami founded a Hail Potsdam. On July 3, 993 years, the first written mention of Potsdam. The German King Otto III presented the place of Potsdam to the Aunt Mathilde Quedlinburgskaya. 1416 The city of Potsdam becomes the ancestral lands of the Franconia sword Goguen Salernav in the person of Friedrich Wilhelm IV. 1536 During major fire the city burned down almost completely. 1618–1648 During 30 Years' War Potsdam was strongly ruined, the most part of the population of the city died from hunger and epidemics. 1660 The Great Elector Friedrich Wilhelm appointed Potsdam the residence along with Berlin. On November 8, 1685, the Great Elector Friedrich Wilhelm published Potsdam, in which he invited to Potsdam the French Huguenots after cancellation of the Nantes Edict in France. This appeal of the great elector was followed by about 20,000 persecuted Huguenots, whose most part was made by handicraftsmen. Protestants from France were excellent armorers, opticians, mechanics on exact works, druggists, doctors, confectioners and creators of an orb. It is new. (1713), with accession to the throne of Friedrich Wilhelm there came heavy time. Potsdam became the garrison city. The king all subordinated to creation of strong army. The new city, including the Dutch quarter, is built. 1720, in Potsdam construction of the city channel is finished. 1722, Potsdam was enclosed with a defensive wall. 1744, Frederick II Veliki laid the foundation for the Sanssouci Palace. World-famous Potsdam had to make also the city palace. Frederick the Great turned Potsdam into the city residence. Creations of the time define and today a look and the nature of the city. Georg Wenceslav von Knobelsdorff, Karl von Gontard and Georg Christian Unger were the best-known architects of the time. 1827, there was the known Russian colony in the village of Alexandrovka with Orthodox Church of St. Alexander Nevsky. 1839, Potsdam was connected to Berlin by the First Prussian Railroad. On December 5, 1848, Friedrich Wilhelm IV provided to Prussia the constitution which came into force in January 1850. 1917, it is founded Schoenstock Societies, Movie, in Babelsberg. On March 21, 1933, in so-called Day of Potsdam, Nazis organized widely advertised chauvinistic performance. In the speech Hitler welcomed a betrothal of former greatness of Prussia with a young force of Nazism. On April 14, 1945, bombing of Potsdam by Americans began at 22:42 and ended at 23:16. During this time 1750 tons of bombs were dumped from 500 planes. Bombing took place a wide strip. More than 4,000 people, including 1,800 people who were on forced labor, and only 80 soldiers died. The garrison church, the city palace and even more than 850 houses were ruined, while parks with their locks remained. We are almost safe. On May 2, 1945, the Soviet troops finished operation on occupation of the city. During operation about 1,200 civilians, about 1,000 soldiers of Wehrmacht and about 500 soldiers of the Red Army died. Besides, the most part of the downtown was destroyed. On July 17, on August 2, 1945, in the Potsdam Setzelienkov Palace, the meeting of leaders of victorious powers took place. The political and economic future of Germany was discussed at the Potsdam Conference, including 1952, Potsdam lost functions of the capital of a symbol of Prussian militarism, and became the district city. The Erft Brandenburg was divided into 3 districts: Cottbus, Frankfurt and der Oder, and Potsdam. On August 13, 1961, construction of the Berlin Wall, which divided Berlin into 2 parts, East and Western, began. Potsdam appeared on border with the Western Berlin, and all manifestations of Cold War were especially notable here. 1990, borders of the new lands of Germany were established, and Potsdam became the capital of the Erft Brandenburg again. 1991, on the former garrison parade ground from the bell tower is distributed bell ringing again. In Potsdam, remains of kings of Prussia of Friedrich Wilhelm I in Friedenskirche and Frederick the Great's church, at the Sanssouci Palace were reburied. UNESCO announced locks and gardens of Potsdam objects of the World Cultural Heritage. On April 1, 1992, the movement of electric trains S-Bahn between Berlin and Potsdam was resumed. 1993, year of celebration of the 100th anniversary of Potsdam. 2001, passes the all-German show of gardens and floriculture in Potsdam. 2002, opening in Volkspark's biosphere of representation of tropical plants and a landscape. 2005, Potsdam moved forward as the candidate for a rank of the cultural capital of Europe. The city palace in Baroque style in which there is a shopping center opened. After construction of the Berlin Wall, Potsdam, located to the southwest from Berlin, appeared on border with the western Berlin. It not only cut off it from East Berlin, but also increased twice time in way to the capital of the Deder. The Night Bridge through Havel connected the city to the western Berlin, and it appeared in the center of the events connected with exchange of spies between the West and the East at the time of Cold War. After reunion of Germany, Potsdam became the capital of the newly created federal land Brandenburg. On October 3, 1990. Population 1990 147,252. 2010 156,906. 2015 167,745. 2020 182,112. The post of the Burgomaster and all municipality appeared in Potsdam in the 15th century of the c. 1809 elections to municipality, with the Oberbürgermeister at the head, began to be held. At the time of Nazi Germany, the Burgomaster was elected by Einstab, and the municipality is dismissed. After World War II, the city authorities in Potsdam, as well as across all Deder, were in words recreated, but in practice elections weren't before reunion. Today, municipality, the central administrative body of the city. From 1950 to 1999, the chairman of municipality was called the city president, now the chairman of municipality. The Burgomaster is elected during direct elections. On the elections of the Burgomaster, which took place on September 22, 2002, any of candidates didn't receive absolute majority of votes, and the last round of elections was held between January Jakobson CDs and Hans-Jürgen Scharfenberg DEADs. January Jacobs got a victory with the minimum majority of votes, 50.1%. Science and education. Potsdam, the university city. In 1991, the Potsdam University was founded. The higher school of the Earth Brandenburg of Karl Liebknecht, the teacher training college. English. Founded in 1948, was his predecessor. I was one of the most important in the Deder. Besides, there is a College of Cinema and Television founded in 1954 in Babelsberg, the main center of the German film production from the moment of the basis. There are also several research centers, including Fraunhofer Institute for an Applied Research of Polymers and Institute of Gravitational Physics of Society of Max Planck. Albert Einstein's Institute. Sites. In 1990, all cultural landscape of Potsdam on the basis of the joint application of 2 federal lands was entered in the UNESCO World Cultural Heritage List. From this point, parks of Sanssouci, the New Garden, Babelsberg, Gleneik and Fauninsel together with the palaces received the status of World Heritage Sites. In 1992 the palace and the Zakrov Park with Christ Redeemer's Church in Zakrov joined them. In 1999 the World Heritage in Potsdam was replenished with 14 more monuments, among which the Array Palace and the Linschit Park, the Russian colony Alexandrovka, the Belvedere on Pfingstberg, the Imperial Station and Observatory in the Babelsbergsky Park. The World Heritage in Potsdam occupies about 500 hectares of the park area, includes 150 constructions constructed during the period from 1730 to 1916. The Berlin and Potsdam cultural landscape is the largest World Heritage Site in Germany. Today Potsdam first of all is known as the City of Palaces and Gardens. In the Berlin and Potsdam cultural landscape about 20 palaces are located. The most known site of Potsdam and at the same time a symbol of the city is the Sanssouci Palace with the park adjoining to him. The Summer Palace, small by the sizes, in style of Rococo, was built in 1745-1747 according to sketches of the Prussian King Frederick the Great. The location of the Summer Palace in the southwest of the city residence of Potsdam directs at a parallel with Versailles and Paris. In 1826-1829 Karl Friedrich Schinkel built the small palace Charlottenhof on a sample of ancient Roman country houses. The name-by-name Maria Charlotte von Genska, the spouse of the former owner, the Chamberlain of Sanssouci Palaces. The new palace became the summer residence of the Crown Prince Friedrich Wilhelm, since 1840 the King of Prussia under a name Friedrich Wilhelm IV who, as well as his predecessor, was an admirer of antiquity. The palace with the portico of the Roman and Doric warrant painted from within, an unusual western facade with sculptures of deer, a sectoral pond and garden pergolas represents the unique monument comparable only with the Pompey House in Aschaffenburg. Inside there is a collection of pictures and the furniture created according to Schinkel's drawings. In 1828-1840 Schinkel near Charlottenhof constructed one more complex in antique style. The Roman swimming baths. With the unique interiors reproducing rather precisely a house of ancient Pompeii, also with sculptures, paintings and the Pompey furniture. The new palace, the largest palace of the city of Potsdam. He settles down in the western part of the park of Sanssouci. His construction began upon termination of 7 Years' War in 1763 and was completed in 1769. The new palace is considered the last significant palace construction in style of Prussian Baroque. Friedrich assumed to use them only in representation purposes. At the disposal of the king for this purpose in the palace there were over 200 rooms, 4 ceremonial halls and theatre in style of Rococo. More than 400 statues of antique gods decorate a facade and a balustrade on a palace roof. Frederick the Great called the palace for the sizes and a rich decor fanfaronity. The Hothaus Palace on hills between Klausberg and the Sanssouci Palace was built at the Romantic on a throne, Friedrich Wilhelm IV in 1851-1864. Construction of the palace was a part of the large-scale project of Triumphalnaja Street which had to begin from a triumphal arch and come to an end at the Belvedere on Klausberg. This project wasn't carried out owing to political disorders of the March Revolution and the shortage of financing. The hothouse palace was built in style of the Italian Renaissance on similarity of a country house of Medici in Rome and Uffizi in Florence. In the Potsdam New Garden, directly on the bank of the Sacred Lake in 1787-1792 at the King Friedrich Wilhelm II Marble Palace was constructed. The architect Karl von Gontard, and since 1789 Karl Gottgerd Langens built the palace in style of classicism. The square two-storied palace in the basis was built of a red brick. The flat roof of the cubic palace is decorated by a rotunda with which great views, including on Finanzel, open. The most known of 7 parks of Potsdam is the Park of Sanssouci. By order of Frederick the Great in 1744 on then the being called desert mountain terraces of vineyards were put. Pluvnaya Avenue of the park 2.5 km long connects the Sanssouci Palace with the new palace. The Park of Sanssouci is rich with sights. Besides palaces, pavilions, temples and sculptures in his territory, the botanical garden and a historical mill was also placed. The new garden was put in 1787. According to a spirit of the age, it reflected current trends of garden architecture and differed from the Baroque Park of Sanssouci. In his registration, the expressed landscape character is felt. Trees and bushes hadn't haircut, and kept a natural form. The most known constructions of the new garden, the Tsetselienkov Palace and Marble Palace, but also a small pyramid, a sphinx at the Egyptian portal of a greenhouse and an obelisk. Peter Joseph Lenn and the Prince Hermann von Puckler-Muskau were engaged in registration of the Babelsberg Park. The hilly area at the Havel River was turned into the park in 1833. In his territory, besides 2 palaces, the Tower Flateau 46 m high with which the great view of the city opens is located. Hard times for the Babelsberg Park came after construction of the Berlin Wall in 1961. The park appeared in the closed border area and it appeared in a Zapyshny. Now the Babelsberg Park returned its former beauty and is open for visitors. In the park, the campus of the Potsdam University is located. The Friendly Islands are located in the downtown. He received the name thanks to the Gostiny Dvor, which was located there nearly 150 years ago. According to the proposal of the gardener and philosopher Karl Forster in 1938-1940, it was created the first constant gardening exhibition of winter hardy flower bushes, ferns and plants here. The most ancient garden of Potsdam, Lustgarten, who was put in 1660 at the Great Elector before the Potsdam City Palace. In 2001, Lustgarten was restored in a modern form. The Wild Park of Potsdam, which was called the Forgotten Garden Len, was put in 1843. Its area is 875 hectares. The entrance to him is at the railway station Potsdam Sanssouci, known for the Imperial Station. The National Park of Potsdam, the newest park of the city. It was opened in 2001 in the military former territory. In the national park there is the Potsdam Biosphere, a tropical garden in the greenhouse calculated on 200,000 plants. The European shape which Potsdam gained, having become the city residence, I found the reflection as in culture and architecture. Along with constructions in various architectural styles and various historical eras in Potsdam, it is possible to find typical houses of Dutches and Russians which were under construction for immigrants of these countries. Tastes of the time reflect exotic buildings as, for example, the Chinese lodge of the 18th century or the Swiss houses in Klein granite built in the 19th century. In the Norwegian style, the sailors' station Kongsnes. By the most part it is destroyed in 1945. And in the English rural style, the Setzelienkov Palace in the New Garden was built. Despite more than 1,000-year history of the city, in Potsdam medieval constructions didn't remain. Local governors in the ambitious architectural projects showed addiction to innovations of culture and technical development. To attract to the city of the Dutch handicraftsmen, by order of King Soldier, Friedrich Wilhelm I in 1733-1740 the Dutch Quarter was built. Works were carried out under the leadership of one of the first immigrants, the architect January Baumann. In the quarter located in the downtown, 134 houses from a red brick divided by 2 streets into 4 blocks were placed. Nansky Gate and Church of Saints Peter and Paul Limit Quarter. In a northern part of the city in 1826-1827 the Russian colony Alexandrovka for the last 12 singers of the Russian chorus was constructed. Peter Joseph Len gave to the settlement the form of a hippodrome with an Andreevsky cross inside. As a sign of the friendly relationship connecting Gojints Lernov with Romanov, the settlement was called in honor of the Tsar Alexander I, who died in 1825. The settlement consists of 13 Fachwerkovy houses. External walls separate 1- and 2-storied houses with pediments are upholstered with a tree to remind the Russian log huts. Near the Russian settlement on the Mount Kapellenberg there is the Alexander Nevsky constructed for colonists the temple. The Rivers Quarter located in Babelsberg in Novus and local church Friedrichskirche in his center was built by order of Frederick the Great in 1751 for the Bohemian Protestants. Frederick II exempted religious refugees from taxes and provided freedom of worship. The king ordered to plant a hazel grove which wood was used in production of guns. Since 1780 landings of a mulberry tree for silkworm breeding appeared. The historic center of the city, Old Market Square. Here the city palace, St. Nicholas's Church, Lustgarten and the old town hall were built. At the time of the deed of the high-rise building of Merkur Hotel, the building of the Higher Special School of Potsdam and the Museum of Cinema here too appeared. The demolished city palace was restored and it was placed Brandenburg. The New Market Square, which appeared in Potsdam the 17th-18th centuries, one of perfectly remained Baroque areas of Europe. In her southwest part the former building of Palace Stables, and nowadays Potsdam Museum of Cinema is located. Kabinethaus on the New Market Square was the city palace. In this building future King Friedrich Wilhelm III and Wilhelm Humboldt were born. In buildings on the New Market Square a number of cultural institutions and sciences located now. The Ries Square connects the pedestrian zone of Brandenburgskaya Street to the avenue at an entrance to the Park of Sanssouci with the well-known green lattice. Green plantings and registration of the area in the middle of the 19th century were charged to Peter Joseph Lenne, who erected in the center Louisenplatz the fountain. In the 1930th years the area was asphalted, and instead of the square the parking appeared. Since 1770 Louisenplatz and Brandenburgskaya Street are divided by the Brandenburg Gate. The garrison city of Potsdam was surrounded with a city wall which served not for his protection, and mainly for prevention of desertion of soldiers and smuggling of goods. The city wall connected city gate, from which remained 3 so far. Small Brandenburg Gate, Nauensky Gate and Hunting Gate. The lost Teltovsky Gate were on southeast side of Gliny Bridge. The Berlin Gate houses are almost completely destroyed in 1945, only one side wall remained. From Nastetsky Gate there was the one and only obelisk. The Brandenburg Gate of Potsdam in the present form were constructed in 1770 by order of Frederick II. Upon termination of 7 years' war, old gate on this place were taken down and replaced with a new monumental construction, devoted to a victory. Is a sample for them the triumphal arch of Constantine served in Rome. The Potsdam Brandenburg Gate had 2 architects, and therefore 2 persons. Paul von Gontard created the project of the facade turned to the city, and his pupil Georg Christian Unger an external facade. The most ancient of the remained gate of Potsdam, Hunting. They was built in 1733 as a northern entrance to the city. Behind them the Kurfürstliche hunting yard which gave the name to gate was located. Larger Nauensky Gate are dated 1755 and are one of the first models of the English neo-Gothic influence on the European continent. The square in front of Nauensky Gate is filled today with café, restaurants and bars, and became the famous place of a meeting of Potsdamers and guests of the capital of Brandenburg. Tramways pass directly through gate. Potsdam possesses the rich collections of the fine arts which are shown in the Potsdam palaces. In Sanssouci, the art gallery constructed by request of the King Frederick II in 1755-1764 is open. It is located to the east from the palace, and it is considered the oldest of the remained separate princely museum buildings in Germany. The whole of gallery is famous for luxury of furniture with gilding of a vaulted ceiling. The main part of an exposition is occupied by performing painting of an era of Baroque, Mannerism and the Renaissance. In Gallery of Sanssouci, such famous Italian and Flemish artists as Peter Paul Rubens, Antonis van Dyck, Antoine Watteau and Caravaggio are presented. A part of funds of gallery was transferred in 1830 to the Open Berlin Alts Museum. During World War II, the painting collection from Sanssouci was transported to the Rheinsbergsky Palace. Only in 1958 the most part of trophy art returned from the Usser to the Dieder. Also far. Write comments. Read comments. Interesting people will tell interesting stories. All of good mood and good luck.